Hey, and welcome to another episode of AT Banter.
Banter.
Hey, Banter 2026. This is, of course, the podcast where we talk with advocates and members of the disability community to educate and inspire better conversation about disability. Hey, my name is, once again, Rob Minot for the first time in 2026. And joining me today, we're a skeleton crew. It's just me and Mr. Steve Barkley.
I appreciate being called a skeleton crew after putting several pounds on over Christmas.
Did you? Was that type of Christmas, eh?
It was indeed.
Yeah,
I ate everything.
But did you have a nice break? How long were you off for?
I was off from we took off the 24th through the 28th. I went into the office on the 29th and discovered that they had locked the building, so there was no point being there because nobody could get in. And then, I've been off ever since.
Nice.
So back to the office on Monday.
Oh, wait, so technically you're not even back?
Not yet, no. Well, technically we are working today. Greg's in the office.
Right.
Building's still locked, but he put a sign on the door for the couriers. And, he's holding down the fort there. I'm working down in the man cave, and we'll be back on Monday.
Excellent. Well, but you had a nice restful time?
Oh, it was fabulous. Absolutely fabulous. Except for the run up to Christmas, because that's always, everybody comes to us. So we had like 16 Christmas Eve and then I think 9 Christmas Day. And we did games on Boxing Day, which was kind of nice and relaxing. And of course, through all of this, from the 26th onward, there has been World Junior Hockey. So I'm like a super happy camper.
Oh yeah, that's right. You know, it's funny. I talked to Mr. Ryan Fleury over the break, very briefly, just to ask him a question, podcast related. And of course, he's on vacation, which is, I should tell the audience, that's why he's not here.
Yep.
But he sends his regards to everybody. And he mentioned that. He mentioned this World Hockey thing. So I'm sure that's where he is right now, is sitting in front of the TV watching hockey. In any case, I have something else to say to you, Steve.
Uh-oh.
Happy World Braille Day.
Well, indeed, happy World Braille Day back to you.
Because this is, of course, being released on World Braille Day. We're gathering here together, actually, in a little bit of an impromptu podcast that we threw together over the break in order to celebrate World Braille Day. So without any further ado, I want to get right to the meat of the podcast because I'm really excited this year. Of course, you know, we've kind of done something like this in past years. We've called it Braille Palooza, very tongue-in-cheek, and we've sort of talked a lot about Braille. This year we wanted to do something a little bit different, so we've gathered together some real Braille advocate superstars, in my opinion, to have a bit of a conversation and talk a little bit more high level about Braille and Braille literacy and where it kind of sits right now, both systemically, in our organizations, in our schools, in our public spaces, and to just get some opinions and some conversation about where people feel we are. It's really important to remember that Braille is literacy and it's access and it's independence for a lot of people. So that's why we wanted to come together and to record this. So with that, I want to introduce our panel for today. We'll go around the room and maybe each of you, if you could just say who you are and give us a little bit of an idea of why this topic is important to you and how Braille how you interact with Braille in your daily or work lives.
I'm Shawn Marsolais. I am the least of the Braille superheroes, as you referred to us, or superstars. I can't remember. So I'm from Blind Beginnings and the Limitless podcast, and I grew up with retinitis pigmentosa, and I actually didn't learn Braille until I was 18. And at that point, I pretty much could no longer read print. But because I learned it sort of late after graduating from high school, I'm still quite slow, and I use it for necessity when, I use it for presentations and playing games and labeling things in my kitchen and stuff like that, because to actually read a Braille book it would take me forever. So I guess I'm a Braille advocate from the side of, I wish I had learned it earlier. I wish that I was a natural at reading Braille, and that I could use it more in my life. But I also work with children and youth who are blind, many of whom are avid Braille readers. So I kind of have that, I come with that perspective as well.
Hello, everyone. I am Jesso, and I have low vision, so I learned Braille in elementary school, but didn't really use it in university. And these days I am a dual media user, so I use large print and Braille. I've got a Braille display sitting in front of me right here at my computer. And in addition to being a Braille user myself, I am a teacher of students with visual impairments. I currently work at the Provincial Resource Center for the Visually Impaired as the outreach coordinator. And I'm also a certified Braille transcriber and a secretary on the board of Braille Literacy Canada. So I sort of come here with a variety of different hats.
True superstar, see?
Yeah.
You're also a superstar. Don't be humble.
Yeah, that's right. We're all superstars today.
So my name is Riane LaPaire. I am the Braille coordinator at the National Network for Equitable Library Service. I am a sighted Braille advocate, and I, like Jen, sit on the board of Braille Literacy Canada as the current treasurer, and you can also, purchase some great Braille devices from me and Steve at Canadian Assistive Technology.
Good plug there.
You're welcome. I was planning that one all since yesterday. And in my hobby and spare time, I volunteer for other blindness organizations, including the Saskatoon Blind Skiers. Not quite a superstar, just here and excited to ensure everyone has equal access to literacy, whether that be through print, but in this case, Braille.
Okay, well, thanks everybody for joining us. Let me just open up the conversation and just ask.
Can we actually step back one?
Sure.
Because I'd really like to have somebody take up the reasoning why we say Braille is literacy, because I think that's a very, very important message.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Braille is as essential to a Braille user as print is to somebody who's sighted. And there are a variety of different tools that we can access or use to access literacy. But for many people with visual impairments, whether it's children or adults, Braille is truly an essential part of their literacy toolkit. There are things that I do, even though I can read large print, there are things that I do every day that I can't do with large print. And so Braille is often the quickest and sometimes really the only way that I can accomplish a task. And so, yeah, I sometimes get the question, just in my personal life about, oh, well, one of these days is technology going to replace Braille? And my answer to that is always, when the day comes that technology replaces print, then sure. But until that day comes, the answer is, I don't think so.
Jen, can you talk about when kids are learning Braille, they're also learning, it's all wrapped up in learning to read and learning Braille for blind students?
Yeah, so students with visual impairments have services from a qualified teacher of students with visual impairments. So this is a professional who has a teaching certificate and also has a master's degree in education of students with visual impairments. And part of that, of course, is on literacy and Braille literacy. But for a student who, even including myself growing up, who is learning to read at the same time as we're learning Braille, we are learning basically literacy. So we're not learning the Braille writing system in the way that a Braille transcriber might, where they're learning all of the rules. But we're just learning Braille as we learn to read and write, the same way that a sighted student does with print.
So given all of that, where is the system failing in terms of pushing Braille literacy forward?
That's a big question. Like, where to even start on that one?
Because there are multiple areas where kids are being failed by the system, and that can be anything from there not being enough qualified teachers of the visually impaired out there. You know, I know in certain provinces there's teachers who have caseloads over 100 kids, and now granted all of those aren't Braille using kids, but you know, how do you even see that many kids in a school year? Then there's a lack of access to technologies that help support Braille, lack of transcribers to produce Braille. What am I missing? There's probably other. Oh, and then there's resistance from some of the vision teachers themselves, some of whom take the attitude that, well, we don't really need Braille because technology is so good now, and that is super dangerous. And I really think they should be sent for retraining when they say that.
Yeah.
Also, a lack of funding, and also just the attitudinal barriers, sometimes even from families and students thinking that, you know, oh, well, audio is just so much easier, or I can type, that's good enough, kind of thing.
Right.
Well, and I think in the case of my parents, and there are other parents, that it's like a big hurdle emotionally to accept Braille or a white cane for somebody who's low vision, that it can sort of pass as sighted. So there's sort of that, like, not ready to accept. Once Braille gets introduced, there's no denying that this person is blind.
I've seen that at the Children's Low Vision Clinic over the years. A number of parents have been very resistant about their kid being taught Braille, and you know, we try and sit them down and lay it out for them as best we can. But at the end of the day, if they say no, it's a no.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, there are assessments that teachers of students with visual impairments use to, gather some objective data about students' learning media and how they're using their various senses to gather information. And they work, the TSVIs work very closely with families to make that decision. But it is an individual decision that's, there is no one size fits all.
So really, it sounds like it's sort of a bit of a mixture of systemic problems as well as attitudinal. And I mean, I guess I would throw something on the pile as well, and that would be, I don't know, maybe we're not driving home the point quite hard enough. You know, I can't help but think back to the journey that sort of the deaf community has gone through over the years. And the way that their advocates have been very, very, very
loud.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you.
Ironically.
Yeah. They've really, really fought the fight. Maybe the advocates for the community needs to take a page from that.
I definitely think there is a lack of awareness just from everybody, like everybody in the general public, when it comes to Braille and technology and how technology can be used to access material in Braille. And I for example, am a little bit involved in computer programming just as a hobby. And like, there are a ton of developers who don't know that Braille displays are a thing and don't realize that they could make a huge difference just by making their apps and their documents and resources accessible. And I use my Braille display out in public quite often, and people will come up and just be interested in what it is, and they've never seen it before. So I do think that, when it comes to Braille and technology specifically, it's just not something that people see every day being used.
I also think that we don't have, like, the argument is always made that it's a small percentage of people who read Braille, which just slams the door instantly, it seems. So if only 10% of the legally blind population is Braille reading, which I don't know if that's accurate.
I think it's about 5.
Is it? Oh, wow.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So we're a small population, and then even smaller piece of that is a Braille user, then the argument can always be, I don't know, it's like, well, it doesn't affect that many people, so I guess we don't need to provide it.
I think too that federal and provincial governments and municipal governments have a place to play here as well, with even from the development of curriculum, that we're not including creating materials accessibly, standards that we need to include for teaching, whether that every potential Braille reading student needs to learn Braille, and this is the requirement that is needed for instruction, for all of those things, because it feels like half of the TVI's job, our teacher of students with visual impairments job, is to just be advocating for a lot of that instruction time and for those expanded core curriculum and those Braille skills, rather than the time that they could be spending with the student. At least that seems to be what I'm hearing in Saskatchewan, but maybe other places as well. But not only that, if we have provincial and federal legislation for Braille signage and having Braille availability, because we would never say this about print,
Right.
right? So why do we need to continue to? I mean, obviously we do need to continue to advocate, but we shouldn't have to continue to advocate for something that is a print equivalent. Honestly, like, I put a Braille label on everything I ship out from NNELS. If I know it's going to a Braille reader, even sometimes if it's not just for an awareness piece. And the number of people who are shocked, or the number of emails I get saying, thank you so much, I could tell that the package was addressed to me, just seems ridiculous.
Right.
And I people are thankful for Braille, and that's great, but it should just be the expectation, right?
Yeah.
There must be some other way to just make this the norm.
That's the same when you get a business card that has Braille on it. Shameless plug, Blind Beginnings, Braille's business cards. But it's so impactful. Like it's so unexpected, especially if it's coming from somebody who isn't in the blindness world, right? Like their business is not related to disability or blindness, which is super rare. But when that happens, it means so much. Or a family member or a friend brailing, like a greeting card, a birthday card, a Christmas card, whatever. Like, it means so much because it is so rare that it happens.
And that makes me actually think of something that came up just before the break, which I'd love to get hear what everybody's opinion on as well, is that in some ways we might be taking steps backwards, because the free matter for the blind with Canada Post is potentially going away.
I personally don't think that we can rely on assurances or verbal agreements that the government is going to continue funding it and Canada Post is going to continue providing it. I think it is such a step backwards to not have it in legislation to make it a guarantee.
For the lay listener who isn't aware, we've been able to mail Braille materials for free because Braille takes up so much space. It's, like a book in Braille is often multiple volumes, a print book translated to Braille is often multiple volumes. And so the cost of mailing Braille would be really, really high, which isn't really fair, that blind people should have to pay more to receive materials in a format that they can read. Something that comes to mind, I have friends, I kind of grew up in a generation where most of us who had low vision were not learning Braille if they could read large print, and their vision wasn't expected to decline. That was sort of what they were encouraged to do. And then as adults, they really struggle in an employment situation, or a situation where you're maybe giving a presentation. You have to be able to read your notes, but in order to read your notes, you have to hold them really close to your face or have really huge font, so it's slower to read. It's just not efficient. So there's that too. It's like, I think a lot more of the low vision community would be better prepared or more employable or more efficient if they were using Braille.
Yeah.
Yeah, Shawn, that's an example of one of the, I mentioned earlier that there's some things I do for work or even leisure that aren't, really possible with large print. And presenting is one of them. We do a lot of videos at work for social media where I'm reading a script. That's another one. I can't really have it in front of my face. Also, when I get nervous, I've got nystagmus, and that gets way worse if I'm nervous. So like print actually becomes much more difficult to read if I'm presenting something than if I'm not.
Yeah, there's actually statistics out that show that people who are Braille literate with a visual impairment have a much higher employment rate than people who are not Braille literate as well. So it has impacts, significant impacts throughout their lives.
Can we talk about electronic Braille versus like hard copy Braille? First of all, the cost of like a Braille display is quite high, and then or you can have sort of a minimum or only a couple of lines of Braille that refreshes. So that's different. But I'm also curious, maybe Jen, you can speak to this, whether I was talking to some of the youth who are Braille readers about refreshable Braille, and there was a comment about how they didn't like the feel of it the same as paper. Whereas for me, because I'm not that great at Braille and I didn't learn Braille till I was 18, I'm like, oh, I love the crispness of refreshable Braille over paper where it can sort of get smushed down a little bit. But just curious about, is there a difference, and how do people feel about electronic versus hard copy print? Well, not print, paper.
Yeah, I think it's probably, like you were saying, personal preference, depending on sort of just what you kind of like to read. But there are advantages to paper Braille. Like Braille display, as you said, is just one line of Braille. Or maybe now with the new multi-line displays, you might get, maybe 9 or 10 lines of Braille. But they aren't in common use yet. And there are situations where you do want to be able to see the whole page. Like I can skim down a page of Braille way faster than I can skim on a Braille display, hitting the little thumb key to refresh. And then there's also tactile graphics. I think these are often left out when we're talking about Braille. Like tactile graphics can also be essential. So in some of my courses, for example, we've been dealing with UML diagrams, for example, that are just very complex, detailed diagrams that I just cannot understand. When I zoom in, I can only see like one word at a time. And they're, you might have 24 boxes and different shapes connected in various ways. And so I get these as tactile graphics, and they are absolutely essential for learning. But, I've been to several post-secondary institutions, and every time I go to a new one, I need to do a whole kind of education and advocacy session all over again with the Accessibility Services Office because they often haven't had a Braille reader in a long time, or maybe the staff has changed, or they just aren't aware of sort of how do we get tactile graphics if we need them. And in BC, at least, there is no government funding for Braille. So, each post-secondary institution has to sort of, find their own funding or figure out their own process.
I'd like to add to that, even if you do have all the processes in place, there is a serious shortage of new Braille transcribers coming into the field, and even if they do take the CNIB course, it doesn't mean that they're ready to come out of the box and transcribe textbooks for post-secondary. It's complex work. You need to build up to that. You need to be mentored. You need to learn about production of Braille and to make sure you have all your Braille formats and things like that too. It's not just as like, okay, I did my course and away I go. Here's your computer science textbook.
Jen, did you just say that there is no funding for universities for Braille?
So my understanding, and this is not my area of expertise, but I just come at this from the perspective of somebody who's taken a lot of post-secondary courses, is that the agency in BC that produces textbooks in alternate formats, they can provide e-text and they can provide other accessible formats, but they do not have funding to produce Braille, is my understanding.
Yeah.
I mean, I know a lot of students that, struggle when they get to university. So they're totally blind, they're Braille reading, they go through the K-12 system, they have access to the Braille materials they need, and then they move on to university and all of a sudden it's not available. And that's really, really hard. But I didn't actually realize that there was like zero, like it's just a definite no, it's not possible. That's awful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've run into many cases where kids hit university and the textbooks for their courses aren't available until they're 3 months into that course.
If at all.
Mm-hmm.
I was just going to say, in regards to the textbook timing issue, I think part of that is this notion that everybody is responsible for accessibility, and so like the instructor, for example, needs to get their textbook list and their course materials ready with enough lead time that the Braille can be produced. Because I've had that be an issue as well, where it's not that people aren't wanting to do it, but it's just that the course materials, for whatever reason, aren't created in time, with enough time to get the Braille done.
So is it possible to get a Braille display through like AT, Accessible Technology BC, to use if you can only use electronic Braille at university? Like, do they account for that in any way by providing the technology?
Yeah, so I should clarify. My understanding is there's no funding for hard copy Braille. So
Right.
Textbooks as an actual, embossed book. ATBC does provide loans of Braille displays, and also there's quite a bit of funding for Braille displays as well.
Okay.
Sorry, I should have clarified that earlier.
But then if you never needed one or had one in high school, you might not know how to use a Braille display.
Yeah.
So you're starting university where arguably there's a lot more reading, a lot more everything, and a lot less support. And now you also have to learn how to read on a Braille display as well.
Yeah, I think access to training is super important for adults, for technology, and also for Braille. I mean, what if somebody loses their vision in their 20s and wants to learn Braille? I think there definitely is a need for more equitable resources in terms of accessing training.
Yeah, I think 100%. I think that, again, this is a big misconception. People don't realize that there is a big learning curve. Somebody can't just jump from reading Braille on paper to jumping into using something like a Braille display. And not only that, I mean, they're infamously expensive. So, for a family to be able to just go out and purchase a Braille display for primary school kiddo, for a lot of families, it's just not going to happen.
Yeah, so in BC, I can't speak to other provinces, but in BC, children do have good access to Braille technology through a program called SetBC. So they would work with their TSVI to get any Braille displays or other Braille technology, embossers, or whatever else they need through SetBC. And then there's some other opportunities for families to get funding as well. But and as I mentioned, ATBC provides funding at the post-secondary level in BC. But you are correct that adults who need a Braille display don't have any funding. So they do have to fund that, $4,000, $5,000 device themselves. And, now there's tactile displays coming out that my understanding is they cost tens of thousands of dollars. So that's even more prohibitive.
Wow.
Talking about a Monarch, it's like $23,000.
So does it give you a tactile diagram as well as Braille?
Yeah, it's a multi-line Braille display, so you can do some interesting things with it. One, it's got dots in a square array, so yes, you can do tactile graphics with it very effectively. It also allows you to zoom in and out on those graphics, so you can get more and less detail, so you can get an overview as well as zoom in and get the detail of a graphic. And it also lets you dynamically adjust the spacing between the Braille. So if you're, a beginning user, you can have it spaced out a little more for, a little more clarity. It's an interesting technology, but because it's so expensive, there's been very little adoption of it in Canada so far, even though it's, manufactured here in Canada.
Wow.
And it's also heavy and big.
Yeah,
I wouldn't want to carry one of those around university.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the kind of device that I think hopefully this is sort of the first device in what will be kind of a new era of multi-line Braille displays and tactile graphic displays.
A lot of potential, but the price needs to come down a long ways. And when you look at new technologies coming out and the cost of technologies, if you go back to the beginning of my career in assistive technology, back then a VersaBraille was somewhere around $9,000. It was a single 20-line Braille display with a built-in computer. We won't get into the details of how crappy that computer was, but if you index that against what that would cost today, it's about what a Monarch is worth, and people were buying them back then. So it's a matter of the funding coming to terms with the advantages of new technologies too, to a certain extent.
Let me throw this out then, because we talked about part of the problem. I think when it comes to funding, specifically for assistive technology, and I know Steve, you can talk for hours about this, but every province has their own programs, and all of those programs seem to be tied to. Part of it's geography. If you've got somebody that's in a remote area, they might not have the same access to any given program somebody who's in more of an urban area. But also it can depend on budget cycles or who's in power provincially or federally. There's all of these variables that your mileage for a family and what they might have access to in terms of a Braille device or any sort of funding to help them get one, it can really vary.
Well, for sure. I've got lots of opinions there. Oftentimes it comes down to the priorities of government. And, as we've just seen happen in Alberta, for example, a conservative government has come in and they have defunded a lot of, well, I wouldn't say defunded, but they've cut back funding to education. Now, every time I've seen this happen, and it's not just the Alberta experience here, it is every single time you get a government that comes in and they start cutting down money to education, the very first people being impacted by that are the students with disabilities, because that's the very first thing they cut back. Even though they have structured funding in place specifically to address the needs of their disability, that money goes into a general pool and it doesn't get spent on that student. It gets spent to cover other costs that have been created because of the shortfall in funding. It's really frustrating. And there have been, back 20 years ago, there was a lawsuit in Alberta. A parent took the government to court and said, hey, you're not educating my child equitably. And the court agreed, and the government had to throw a lot of money into special ed. But that court opinion is 20 years back, and it almost seems as though it's going to take another round of people suing governments to get equitable access to education.
I hope everyone hears that. Steve says sue government. Everybody.
Yeah, that's right. But it's true. But honestly, I feel the same way. I think that some of these are real systemic problems that I don't know how else they get addressed, because just sort of relying on whoever's in power at the time to do the right thing just isn't working.
So how does Braille Literacy Canada, is there an advocacy arm of that group? And is there an approach or a strategy or suggestions or thoughts on how to kind of solve some of these problems?
The advocacy committee, it has been recently formed. Advocacy has always been a part of Braille Literacy Canada, but now it's a little bit more formal. And I do know that they are working toward doing more.
I imagine raising awareness is a starting point, right?
Yeah.
If
yeah.
more people understand the importance of Braille, how hard it is to get Braille, I don't know, some of the sort of bigger global problems, then maybe that's a starting
Yeah.
point.
Certainly, like Braille Literacy Canada has advocated for things like Braille bank statements and updated Braille information cards on airplanes and things like that, especially with the switch to UAB. So, I mean, there has been work done in the past, and I'm not on the committee, so I don't know what is currently in progress, I guess would be the best way to put that.
They've also done like the Braille signage guidelines, for example,
Yes.
that
Yeah.
provide guidelines for high quality Braille signage. But a lot of people aren't aware of that. So, awareness building is a huge piece of getting this information out there.
Okay, so what are the requirements for Braille signage? Or standards, or like, it seems very, as a blind person, there's Braille on elevators, maybe, and sometimes Braille on washrooms. So I'm not even aware of what the standards are. And because it's so inconsistent, I don't even look for it most of the time because I'm expecting that it won't be there.
As far as I know, I mean, I think that there are, on paper, there certainly are standards, placement, height, UEB, all of that type of thing. Those are all there, but you go back to enforcement, and if there's no enforcement mechanism, or if there's not even a way for people to report issues, it's the Wild West out there.
I think the other thing is a lot of people don't know how to advocate what their rights are. So they don't know what their rights are. They don't know how to advocate or who to advocate to. Like, who do we contact? And at the end of the day, like, a lot of families are exhausted from advocating for so many things that they just have nothing left. So that, it's, at a certain point, it's like, oh, good, my kid's going to school. But like they have Braille support, 1 day a week or something, and well, it's better than nothing, and I don't know what I should be asking for, and I don't know who to really ask for, but I have this, so I've put all my energy into this, so now I don't have enough energy to advocate for money to buy a Braille display for the home, or a Perkins Brailler even, right? I think there's just I think there's also a missing link of like knowing what those basic rights should be. Like, maybe there needs to be like some sort of wide known standard of what those rights should be, and who to go to if they're not being met, and also knowing, like, especially in the education system, that education knows what those standards should be, what those minimum standards should be, not because I would guess that a lot of those minimum standards aren't being met across Canada.
I'm just thinking about a Braille embosser or Braille printer, when it's always been this thing in my mind that, wow, like, you have one of those, you're so lucky. And if we put that in terms of like a household printer, like, most families probably have a printer, or most people probably a lot of people have a printer in their home. Or you can go get it printed at Staples or whatever. Like, you can access print material super easily. Whereas to actually print a document out in Braille, I'm thinking of like, maybe you want to proofread your paper that you've written for your university course or whatever. It's like, it's a luxury to have an embosser. It's very expensive as well, and not something most people have at their homes.
Not to mention the paper costs more too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think, a really useful mental exercise is just, always switching sides and thinking about, how would this fly if it was print? How would this fly if it affected the sighted community? What would people do if all of a sudden, there's no sign at all on any of the bathrooms? So you don't know. It's the Wild West.
You just guess and you hope you're right.
You just guess. Like, of course, that's not going to fly, right?
Yeah.
Said to you as a parent, we're cutting back on teachers who teach reading. How
Yeah,
do you
exactly.
feel, right? Like,
Yeah.
that's exactly what they do all the time, though.
We're not going to have books anymore.
Sorry, books are too expensive, everybody.
We're just going to teach everything auditorily. Hope that works for y'all.
Yeah, we're
listen,
gonna do it all with TV. We can do it all with TV now.
Hey, listen, we got audiobooks on Spotify, no problem.
Just ask Google. Yeah.
I do want to speak to somebody, I don't know who it was, mentioned the shortage of professionals. And I think this is a very multifaceted issue. I also think being a TSVI or a Braille transcriber is an amazing career. So if anybody is interested in that, that is something that, I've been in the field now for about 18 years and I'm still learning new things every week. So yeah, if anybody's interested, that's a great field to get into.
Why do we think that they're becoming harder and harder to find, and less people seem to be engaging with that career? Why do you think that is?
I don't know. I mean, I don't have any statistics, but I don't know that I would say that there are less people necessarily engaging. I think the shortage in sort of disability professionals has been a long-standing problem for probably decades. And again, I think a lot of it is awareness. There's lots of people who just don't even know that this is a field, and who just, even a lot of teachers that are visually impaired, just sort of stumble into it and say that, when I was a classroom teacher or whatever, I didn't even know that this was a field, and now I love it.
And also the shortage, it might be that there isn't anybody who can teach Braille or produce Braille in like Kimberley, British Columbia. The nearest person is an hour's drive away or longer or further or whatever. So sometimes it's like where you live and where there isn't anybody that has that expertise in that area. So if the pool was bigger to choose from, if there was more people across all regions that had these skills, then we could, because when a child's learning Braille, they really should be seeing their vision teacher like every day. If you think about kids learning to read, it's not just like once a week we're going to work on reading, right? It's not all day every day, but you want to spend some time every day working towards these skills of literacy. So
yeah, and we work in my job at PRCVI, we work very hard with school districts and independent schools to, if they don't have a teacher of students with visual impairments, maybe they've never had a visually impaired student before, we work with them to connect them to teachers who might be available for contracting, for example, and also just giving an overview of sort of the services that a student who's blind or low vision requires. So yeah, that is something we do.
Anybody else have any closing thoughts before I start to wrap things up?
In BC, families should know that public schools and independent schools need to provide a teacher of students with visual impairments and a Braille transcriber for Braille using students. So,
how much? Like how often? Does there like a minimum? I'm just curious.
That would depend on sort of the caseload, I think, and the assessment of the TSVI in terms of the student's needs.
But that is something that parents could do to advocate. Like if you have I guess if you have a Braille reading student, there must be a TVI that's teaching them Braille. But if there isn't a Braille transcriptionist or something, that's something they could be pushing for. Because I hear a lot of families say to me that their child's EA does not know Braille when it is a Braille reading student.
Wow.
That does happen.
Also, like the advocacy around teaching contracted Braille too is really important, and making sure we do have professionals that are able to teach contracted Braille. Because like I know parts of the country, they either leave it up to the student or they just think it's more efficient to teach uncontracted Braille, which is letter for letter.
Wow.
And I know that there are a lot of Braille readers who feel very strongly against that, and
Well, it's not efficient.
and I feel like it's not efficient. Yeah.
Well, then we're not teaching apostrophes in print anymore either.
Right.
There is research that shows, at least for children learning Braille, that learning contracted Braille is more efficient than uncontracted. So,
Yeah.
And in some of those provinces are also saying, oh, well, it's just easier for the EA working with the student, and that should never be the consideration.
Yeah, our physics teacher doesn't really know physics, so they're just going to, fall back on what they know. They're going to teach gym in physics class.
That's right. They've watched a lot of Star Trek, though, so they
So, is there anything that people listening could do on World Braille Day to help raise awareness, or is there anything? I mean, maybe share this podcast or something.
Yeah, that's a great idea, Shawn. I love that.
Yeah.
yeah, so Braille Literacy Canada has a couple of World Braille Day events in partnership with about 8 different organizations. I won't name all of them because I will forget some. But the World Braille Day website is on the NNELS website. Riane, does that have a short URL?
It does. It is www.nnels.ca/WBD.
Perfect. And the activities that we have are we have a set of games and fun activities for students in Braille and tactile graphics that can be downloaded for free. When you sign up for that, for this year, you also get access to the previous 3 to 4 years of Braille Boost materials. So that will be available for download. There will also be a workshop, I believe, on Braille and technology in English and French, presented by users
Braille's
of
great
various
input.
devices. Yes. And Riane, I believe there's some Braille resources for libraries as well.
Yes, there is. There's some great programming ideas for libraries available on accessiblelibraries.ca or biblioaccessible.ca. And these are programming ideas that you can use as is and then implement into your own programming ideas to make all of your library programming more accessible. And certainly they will be built upon, and we take feedback on those, and they're great ways to celebrate Braille in the month of January and all year round, and incorporate Braille into your story times, your book clubs, your pen and paper activities, your scavenger hunts, your gaming, anything that you can possibly think of. You can include Braille in.
It's really unfortunate that Louis Braille was born on January 4th because nobody's at school, right? Like,
Yes.
it's too hard. Like, I don't know. I'm just like sitting here thinking, if there was a day where kids across the country, world, whatever, celebrated Braille, learned about Braille, did activities like at school, and it was part of the curriculum, that would be really, really cool. It'd be a really good start.
What day did he die?
I don't know. Maybe it was more convenient.
Yeah, maybe it's a better day, Why does it have to be on his birthday?
Yeah.
Or what? Yeah, exactly.
That's partly why we call it World Braille Days sometimes, and then just celebrate the whole month of January.
Oh, his
Right.
death date wasn't
That's a
any
great
better. It's
idea.
January 6th.
Oh, geez.
Oh, wow. Jeez,
Dude.
Come on, Louis, help us out.
Yeah. Well, so the first step is moving World Braille Day to
Yes.
like November or something where there's nothing to do. And
Totally. No, you're totally right, actually.
November 18th. Do it on my birthday.
There you go. Well, listen, I guess in general, the big takeaway that I'm taking away from this episode, and that I hope that the audience takes away, is just how important Braille and Braille literacy is, and how important that the work that Braille advocates like you folks, how important it is, and what good work you're doing. So please keep up the good work. Thank you for everything that you do. And thanks for coming on and having a great convo.
Thank you to all of you for giving us this platform to talk about Braille and always being so supportive.
Jen and Riane, where can people find you guys in case throughout the rest of the year if they want to reach out and find your organizations?
So you can find me at NNELS.ca or emailing braille@nels.ca.
Cool.
Or Braille Literacy Canada, that's blc-lbc.ca, or Canadian Assistive Technology.
There you go.
So people can find me at Braille Literacy Canada. And probably the easiest way to get in touch with BLC is by emailing info@blc-lbc.ca.
Excellent. All right. Well, thanks again, guys. And we will see you next year for World Braille Week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks,
Here,
guys.
have fun.
And Shawn, how about you? Where can people find you?
You can find me at Shawn@blindbeginnings.ca or limitless@blindbeginnings.ca.
Well, there you go. Another World Braille Day under our belt.
Indeed.
Yeah.
It's been a bumpy ride.
Yeah, that was a good conversation, though, and I think an important one to have. I think that getting everybody's different perspectives on the landscape of Braille and Braille literacy is kind of important. And I don't know, there's some epiphanies in there for me. I don't know about you.
It struck me while we were talking about it that we always seem to be on the defense when it comes to Braille. We're always trying to defend access to it and expand access to it. Maybe we need to start sicking some of these Braille users on politicians, having them storm their offices and throw bumpy paper at them.
I was thinking the same thing. Maybe we're just too nice. You know what I mean? Like, because some of this is really frustrating and really is not equitable, even though, we're supposed to be, we're supposed to have the ACA and provincial legislation in different provinces. But really, is it just lip service? Unless we really have some people out there really pushing to make some real systemic change. And you think about it. You think about the history of disability rights in the States or even in Canada. A lot of it's there was some rabble rousers that got the ball rolling in a lot of that stuff.
Yeah, indeed. And they managed to get federal standards put in place in the States, which is really, I think, something that we need in Canada. Leaving everything to individual provincial governments to figure out and not having an overarching standard, I think, is a mistake.
Totally. Yep. Yeah. And again, that's why I really think that conversations like this is important and to get the message out there that it's key. It's key if we want to build an accessible and equitable society. Things like Braille literacy, we have to get better. But we're not going to fix that today, sir.
No, probably not.
Well, in the meantime, where the heck can people find us?
Well, people can email the podcast at cowbell. Sorry, our regular cowbell guy's out.
I know.
At atbanter.com.
They can also find us online at www.atbanter.com.
Yes, they can. And we're on the social medias like Facebook and Mastodon.
Instagram. You can go on Instagram and look at pictures of pancakes.
Oh, okay. Nice.
Yeah. And that's it.
Pancakes.
That is going to about do it for us this week. A big thanks, of course, to everybody for joining us. And we will see everybody next week.
This podcast has been brought to you by Canadian Assistive Technology, providing low vision and blindness solutions, as well as physical access solutions and augmentative communication aids across Canada. Find us online at www.canastech.com Or if you're in the Vancouver Lower Mainland, visit our storefront at number 106 828 West 8th Avenue in Vancouver. That's 1 block off Broadway at Willow. You can reach us by phone toll-free at 1-844-795-8324 or by email at sales@canastech.com.